I'm Randy Bias, the CEO and co-founder of Cloud Scaling, and I also sit on the board of directors for the OpenStack Foundation. And Cloud Scaling is sort of well known for being a leader in large-scale production OpenStack deployments. We have 2 of the Fortune 15 today who are running somewhere on the order of 20 to 40 racks worth of cloud. And I'm honored to be here. Thank you, Tucker.
Thank you, Randy. Praveen.
Praveen Akiraju, CEO at VCE. We're a joint venture between Cisco, EMC, VMware. I'm sure you heard a little bit of that from Pat this morning.
Were you in the room, Praveen? Were you? He loves you. Too much love going on.
I'm glad he said good things.
Yeah, I'm telling you. You need to Google search your name multiple times. You're all over the place. Yeah.
So, we were founded about 5 years ago. Invented the category of converged infrastructure, which is essentially a brand new way of deploying data center and cloud infrastructure. So thank you, Tarkan. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Praveen. Sam.
I'm Sam Greenblatt. I run engineered solutions, which means appliances. And I'm the CTO of the Enterprise Solutions Group at Dell.
And working very closely with Marius.
I work for Marius.
Yeah, your brother from a different mother, that's what you say. I'm not going to repeat that again.
At HP, and now I'm working with him.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sam, for being here. And next up, you have Sherry.
Sure. Sherry Littlejohn. I am EVP of Enterprise Architecture and IT Strategy for Wells Fargo, and I know all of you are Wells Fargo customers, right?
Yeah. Raise your hands if you. Okay. Absolutely.
So we're all
They're shy.
Good stuff.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sherry.
I'm Shin Liang. I'm the CTO of Cloud Platforms Group at Citrix. So you guys all know what Citrix does after that wonderful speech by Mark T, our CEO.
And right before that, you were with
I came in through acquisition of Citrix. Citrix is really a great, great collection of wonderful entrepreneurial talents. And I came in through a company called Cloud.com, where I was the founder and CEO.
And you don't have any relationship with Charles? Charles Liang, that is. Oh, I guess not.
I know he looks like
I know, he looks like you. No. All right, next up.
All right, so my name is Doug Murray. I'm the CEO of Big Switch Networks. We are a software-defined networking company, so the way to look at it is we're a great alliance partner of Nexenta and Tarkin and his team. So they do software-defined storage. We handle the networking side. So thrilled to be here, and thanks for the invitation.
Thank you for being with us. Next up.
So I'm Andy Schwabecker.
What was that? Schwabecker. Okay. I'm just trying to listen carefully.
Yeah. So I forgot to send a pronunciation guide. I apologize. So I'm SVP of Cloud Computing Services at SoftBank, and SoftBank is a bit of a collection. So we're what you would describe as an IT conglomerate, and we have key assets in areas of cloud computing, platform, and content. Most notably Alibaba, Yahoo Japan, and SoftBank Telecom in Japan. And I focus on the enterprise side of our cloud computing business.
So digital media, technologies, software and hardware, a lot of work in investment company at the same time, investing in a lot of technology companies. So it's not a bank for software. Kind of sounds like that, but it's not. Clear?
Well, we take the investments from the Silicon Valley and give them access to Japan, and we've had some success over the years doing that.
And I know, Andy, the team is here, right? Miyachi-san and the rest of the team are all at the VMworld over the past week, and you guys a close VMware partner.
Yes,
correct.
Very close.
Awesome. Next up.
Well, before I introduce myself, I wanted to apologize for being severely underdressed here. This is probably by far the most formal.
I think you look good.
The most formal IT conference or gathering.
Dude, what are you talking about? Are you kidding
there
me?
You go. Yeah. Okay, thank you. You made me feel better. Yeah. So my name is Boris Rensky. I'm co-founder and chief marketing officer of Mirantis. Mirantis is the pure play OpenStack company. We are the largest OpenStack guys around. We have about 540 people in the company, all focused exclusively on OpenStack. We've done, at this point, well over 100 implementations of OpenStack for various enterprises, telecommunications companies, and service providers. And what we do is basically 3 things. One is we sell subscription to our OpenStack distribution, Mirantis OpenStack. 2 is we do OpenStack training and certification. And 3, we do implementation services around OpenStack.
Fantastic. Thank you for being here, Boris. And next up, Chris.
I'm Chris Orlando. I'm the co-founder of Scale Matrix. We are a cloud infrastructure and managed service provider. We operate from wholly owned and operated data centers here in North America. Our data centers run a proprietary platform that enables us to manage variable density and high efficiency at the rack level. So we've got a very unique spin on how we manage data centers, control costs, and deliver great value for our customers.
Fantastic. And you're San Diego. You mentioned
Yep.
beautiful place. We want to move our headquarters there and be with you with that beautiful scenery you have. And Chris, since we went through this, you're a big partner at Nexenta. You do a lot of work with some of the vendors on this panel, also at the event. What was your overall impression of the VM world? By the way, this is the politically incorrect panel, so you can feel free how you shared, and you can share it the way you want, as a partner, as a customer, to us, to some of the panel members. How was the event? What did you hear? What do you think what's going to happen next, as a partner, as a customer, to some of the vendors here in the city and at the event?
Okay, so we get asked a lot, how we're going to compete with folks like Amazon, right? It's a big question for us, and we say that we try not to, right? Open is a very key focus for us. One of the ways that we compete is by managing the data center, owning all the infrastructure, controlling all the costs at every level. It's one of the reasons why we partner with Nexenta, because it fits into our open strategy. VMworld, right? They made a lot of announcements that they're going to change the way that customers, change the options that customers have about where they're going to host workloads. Right? VMware has traditionally been a very partner-focused organization. We've been a big piece of that for 5 or 6 years. We're a VMware hosting partner with Dell. I think there are more options now. That's going to create challenges, I think, for partners and opportunities for customers. That's going to make everybody kind of elevate their game. Because like you said, it creates betterness, not bitterness, right? Some challenges and competition. I think that's going to make a lot of people take a look at how they're hosting things.
Obviously, it's going to create opportunities for us. So on that note, you guys took over Dell's cloud business, correct? As one of the service providers that Dell chosen, correct?
The initial 5 we've been hosting with Dell, a bunch of partners and customers at State Street here in the room. Fun business for us.
So Dell decided not to compete with its own channel. They said, hey, Scale Matrix, you take our cloud-based customers and you become a public cloud service. Pretty much, correct? Absolutely. And you're one of them. So having spoken about Dell, Sam, you've been there for some time now. You came from HP. You were at Computer Associates. You had a lot of CTO roles. You've done a lot of open systems. You're big in Linux. Since the Linux became up Linux, I think maybe you're Linus's father. I'm not sure. You're so involved with him and with the industry.
I wish I was. Linus's father was one of the founders of Nokia. So if I did that, I would have been in better shape.
Even better shape, at least for your wallet. So having said all that, what's the Dell view beyond? Obviously, Marius talked about it. Obviously, software defines the big news. You heard also Pat and Citrix and Mark, their viewpoints. What's your view as you're moving forward as not only Dell ESG, but as a whole as Dell Corporate?
I always love the labels that we put on things in this industry, whether it be cloud, whether it be hyper-converged and all that. We've always been a very big believer in open source. We were very happy when Sun open sourced ZFS, which is the basis of your product. We love the ZFS model, the scaling out, and the basically its recovery and its high availability. We love the open networking. JR's in the Rivers is in the room, and we absolutely love Cumulus. And we are a big OpenStack. Matter of fact, we're an investor in Mirantis, and at least Michael is. And we also just did Evo Rails with our friends at VMware. We believe that open is the only way we can go. When you say OpenSDx, you can't have software defined if it's not open, and that's Dell's position and Michael's position.
Super, totally agree with you. So having said that, you heard OpenStack multiple times. Sheng Liang, who's not related to Charles Liang. Good for you also from a financial perspective, I think, Sheng. But you're done well. Let's be open about it in an OpenSDx conference, right? Cloud.com. Mm-hmm. You're the father and the mother of CloudStack.
Wow.
Kind of, sort of, no? I'm sure Randy is going to have a point of view on that in a second. But how are you doing? Cloud
No,
Stack is a big deal. You guys done a lot of great work around Zen. Obviously, it's acquired you about what, 2 years ago? What was the time frame?
3 years ago.
3 years ago. So what's going on with Cloud Stack viewpoint? Where are you guys taking it? I know you have some OpenStack integration going on. Maybe I'm not 100% clear on that. Just explain.
Yeah, you want me to explain how CloudStack will do in a world where everyone else is going with OpenStack? I guess that's the question. But you know, before
I was trying to be nice.
Yeah. The thing is, you said I'm the father of CloudStack. You're putting it very kindly. Like a lot of people don't know is like Randy actually probably has as much to do with success of CloudStack as with
I'm
with
trying
our
to
joint
stir
work.
it up for Randy.
With our joint work at KT. I mean, you really helped us hard in it in the early days. I think CloudStack has been very successful. Ultimately, the market is taking off, and the market nowadays is probably a little bit different from where it was a few years ago. Cloud orchestration probably are becoming a little bit less interesting than it used to be, and I think OpenStack as a brand is great. And it represents a movement, it represents a way of thinking. But basically, at the end of the day, Mark Templeton early on talked about abstraction. So personally, where I spend a lot of my time is actually a lot of times on layers on top of CloudStack, OpenStack these days, because I don't believe those technologies are immature anymore. They're all ready to go. If you are ready to build a cloud, you can use a variety of technologies that's available today. I mean, when we got started 5-6 years ago, that was not the case. So you have to pick one, and you have to hire a big team to do another. But I don't think it's the case anymore. I mean, today you can get wonderfully packaged either software or hardware to implement the cloud. But what I think the great new opportunity that's opening up that frankly excite me and excites Citrix is really to move up the stack, to go for a new level of abstraction, things around how to really make human operations more efficient, how to make your day-to-day work more efficient, how do you actually make application orchestration more efficient as opposed to just infrastructure orchestration.
But by the way, on that note, as Nexenta, we have about 5,500 customers. About 1,500 of them actually used a combination of CloudStack and OpenStack, and KT, Korean Telecom, is obviously one of them in production, almost 100 petabyte plus in production and as a hosting service. And I know SoftBank has a lot of plans and programs in that space. That's why, Andy, you just joined. You left 8x8. You joined SoftBank about 6 months ago, maybe less? Less. And now you're heading the cloud strategy. I know Nikesh joined you from Google too, right? Right in the digital side of things with Ken and with Masa. So what's going on with SoftBank? What's your view into the cloud as a provider, both as a mobile provider, but also you guys buying other companies? Obviously, you guys are in the news a lot. But your vision as a customer, also as a partner.
Okay, so let me start off with kind of some of the drivers for cloud adoption and open SDx. So we have a history of building cloud computing services. I've been involved in VMware-based cloud computing services, Zen-based cloud computing services, over the years. And before that, really infrastructure that's operated in data centers without any kind of automated management tools. And the kind of the friction that an enterprise has to adopt these services is starting to go down, because of what VMware is doing, because of what companies like what Randy's working on, really to adopt OpenStack and move workloads into a hosted, cloud service provider environment. Those barriers are going down, in no small part to what you're doing with software-defined storage. And, we're very interested in technologies that will help drive the adoption and move us out of this early adopter phase, into really the kind of the professional era. And it was particularly exciting to see our partner VMware announce, openness and, the power of and, as I think Pat said, to make the tools that VMware provides to the enterprise also work for developer style workloads, which is what, companies like Cloud Scaling and Mirantis are really focused on.
Super. Speaking of cloud scaling, Randy, I know you're sitting there and thinking what Sheng is talking about. You've been involved in some of these deployments, like Korean Telecom, right? You've done more on that. You're working with other companies as well. And if Sheng is the father and the mother of the cloud stack, some view you same for the OpenStack. Don't turn red. I mean, that's what we hear all the time. So talk about cloud scaling and your views as we move forward. Just you heard, what Boris said from Mirantis and what you heard from Shang, and also SoftBank right now. What's the next 3 to 5 years looking like for us?
Well, I mean, I've spent about the last 24 years working at the infrastructure layer, and the thing that I still see people having a hard time with is that there's just no business value in the infrastructure layer. And I say that as a longtime infrastructure guy. I mean, there's zero, right? I mean, if you've got an EMC system deployed and somebody else does, you get no competitive advantage over that other person. All the real business value is up the stack in the application layer. And people sometimes kind of lose sight of the forest, and they're paying attention to the trees, and they're focused on their virtualization platform or their cloud orchestration system or this thing, the other thing. And what I actually see as being highly transformative at the moment is the fact that enterprises seem to be waking up to the point of view that DevOps is their path forward to a more agile, more nimble business, right? I was talking about with my co-founder earlier today, you've got sort of like these attempts to bring in sort of horizontal, software control layers like OpenStack or vCloud Director, and then you stick them on top of business that's basically built in silos. And that looks very different from the web scale guys. Google's and Amazon are much more of a scale out organizational structure. And so enterprises see DevOps now as a way to get greater agility by breaking down the barriers between the developers and operators so that the IT staff can get security and governance and compliance and feel good about that they're managing, they're doing their due diligence for the business, while the developers can get all the speed so they don't have to wait weeks, months, years in order to get something up and running. And I think that's where the true value is going to come out. And I think that DevOps in the enterprise actually has an opportunity to transform the thinking and then to drive in platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, and those kinds of things. So I find that cultural shift far more interesting than a lot of the technology pieces.
Super. And along the lines of what we heard from Boris as well, and kind of also what we heard from you, Shang. Having said all this, obviously a big switch, as the big switch, that cloud switch, that virtual switch, with a big message, with a big vision around SDN, software-defined networking, not only in the last few months and a few quarters as Doug, you joined the company, but beforehand, changing the idea behind SDN with Nisira at that time. You guys are independent. Your independence is one of your strengths. You're partnering with a lot of people. We love you guys, obviously, working with you with a lot of partners, Dell, Supermicro, and others. So you joined the company in the last 6 months, Doug, or a year?
Last year.
A year. We talked about this earlier.
Yeah.
Too much wine last night, on my part. How is everything going? I know Big Switch started with a vision. You shifted certain things since you joined. I know Prashant, the team. What is the next 2-3 years looking like for you and for the industry, for all of us?
Absolutely. So first of all, again, thanks for having us here. Great partner, so appreciate it. On the SDN side, so the way I would look at this, the way I'd tee it up is, if you look at applications, you look at servers, you look at storage, everything's evolved over the course of the last 20 years. What really hasn't evolved was networking, right? So the networking element of what goes on in the data center has become the weak link. And so there's this great bold vision called software-defined networking that came on the scene about 4 or 5 years ago. And the premise of having separated software and hardware in a data center was incredibly appealing to people. The challenge with it is that it was ripe with complexity. People had to write their own software and their own applications to make this happen. And typically when you have CCIEs and other folks that have to write this stuff, it gets really complicated and they say, I'm just going to buy my Cisco stuff again. And so what happened was hyperscale companies, so like Google and Facebook as an example, Google kicked off something called the Andromeda Project, where they stopped buying Cisco switches, started to have their own software architectures to advance how they deploy applications in a data center. And they did so using bare metal switches, they did so using software-defined networking. And so the vision of our company that we moved to was, instead of actually enabling people to build their own erector set, we actually came up with this vision of, let's take what Google does, and let's take what Facebook does, let's productize it and bring it to everybody else. So we have this vision as a company to have, we still have a controller. That controller is our intellectual property. But instead of having people write the applications, we actually do that for them. And then we have our own software that works on bare metal switches or on branded switches, like switches from Dell, that simplify how people get the benefits, both operationally and CapEx-wise, in terms of SDN. So it really represents a fundamental shift in terms of networking, and we really stand behind this over the course of what's going to happen in the next 2 to 3 years.
Super. So we're lining up all these thoughts from storage to compute to networking, Praveen, for you. Because Pat did a great opening for you. He said VC knocked out of the park. Obviously, part of the reason is you and your leadership. I'm not trying to be nice. It's the fact the industry knows that. You've done a phenomenal job with one of the most difficult boards in a sense, right? You have your Cisco on your board sitting on one corner, EMC on the other side, and VMware on the side, and you're managing all this. You should be running for president, in my opinion. But having said all this, the other reason, by the way, I love Praveen because he said, I'm going to turn VC branding to VCN. Kyoko, did you get that? No, that was a joke. I think people are getting tired. I think we need to get coffee. So, Praveen, joking all aside, where are you taking the organization? I mean, you guys done a phenomenal job. You grew the business. Obviously, I'm not sure if you guys share dollar numbers and so on, but I don't want to put you on the spot, but share the numbers anyway. What's the next step for the constellation, for this joint venture?
Yes, it's interesting to hear all the perspectives, right? I mean, this is obviously an open SDX forum. One of the things, I spent 19 years at Cisco, so I'm sort of guilty of building those clunky switches that tie everybody down, apparently.
Thanks.
But one of the things that was interesting for me, and my history was essentially hardcore engineering, is I came to VC. VC is a very different type of company, right? It's like a solutions provider. Essentially, we're putting together solutions. The thing that I realized as I kind of talk to a lot of customers is, we as engineers, right, love our acronyms. Right? It used to be BGP, OSPF, EIGRP. Now it is, Nova and Glance and Chef and Gluster and Ceph and everything else. If you talk to an average customer, somebody in oil and gas, or somebody in public sector, city government, right, their problem is there's a lot of innovation coming at them. Right, a lot of different opinions, very smart people, like folks on this panel, essentially saying, well, you got to go with, this latest innovation. Just remove all your switches, just go run your software on it. They fundamentally do not have the ability of the teams to absorb that level of innovation. At the same time, they're competing with the public clouds who are innovating at a tremendous rate. Right, so the problem space really was about two things. Right, how do they get the agility in their organization while dealing with this tremendous amount of complexity? So the focus for us really was to say, look, innovation is going to happen, and innovation is the lifeblood of the industry. Every week we have a new project being released and a new name that you need to learn, and have your secret decoder ring to figure it out. How do we take those and provide a solution that actually helps customers deploy a world-class infrastructure, keep up to date, and be able to compete with the Amazon, so they can actually have a better control. Now, there's always going to be workloads in the public cloud, but I think if you're a CIO, what you're trying to do is to say, I want to have a better handle on how these transformations happen, right? So that's really what we set out to go solve. And back in 2009, when VC was created, early days yet in terms of all the open projects, Cisco, EMC, VMware came together, right? They were all good friends at that point, remain good friends, right?
Thanks to you, you're managing it really well.
Let's go change the way infrastructure gets delivered. And I think we've progressed tremendously because we've addressed the one single problem that every CIO faces, which is complexity, right? At the bare bones of it, we're putting together solutions, but from a customer perspective, it dramatically accelerates their ability to adopt new technology. It simplifies their operations, right, and gives them a lot more efficiency. So as we go forward, I mean, as I'm sitting here listening to my colleagues on the panel, as well as to Pat and Ben and folks over the last couple of days, it gets me really excited because there's more complexity, right, further up the stack. And I think it's an opportunity for folks like us to be able to continue to deliver that innovation to our customers. So that's really the way we look at this. I mean, there is and I know Randy's doing some of this as well, and a lot of the OpenStack folks have realized it's not enough to just kind of, innovate the technology. You have to actually help customers build it and deliver it, right? And I think that's something that we, as an industry, need to make sure we keep sight of, right? As we innovate in the open space, let's have a thought for the CIOs who are trying to digest this and actually deliver that. So I think that's really the crux of the problem we solve, and that's given us 5 straight quarters of 50% plus growth, right?
Which is amazing.
Very competitive.
Which is amazing.
Marketplace.
At a $1 billion level and plus, having growth like that is unbelievable. And you made hyper-converge, you made converge sexy.
Yeah.
Before your time, there was another converge conversation. I know Sam would disagree with that because he thinks he's cooler than that. He's going to talk about it in a second. Because you're part of the Evo launch at VMware. Maybe you can delineate what's Evo doing, Sam, and what's VC doing. But before we get to that, I heard you mention CIO, the term CIO, multiple times. You talked about cost. You talked about agility. So I kept Sherry listening to this conversation. And Sherry is like this. Rolling her eyes, listening. So I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I did. Sherry, on the panel on Monday, you were unbelievable. Basically, you brought us from 50,000 foot level to ground zero.
The reality.
So do it again.
So let me just say this. We are a bank, and because all of you are Wells Fargo customers, or will be after this conference, we're in the business of trust. So we want to make sure that what we have available to us makes sense, and that we can do it and make some of these transitions. Because this technology is definitely something that you would want us to do. We would want to do as a company. Our customers want to be able to make it easy for them to do business with us. And we want our team members to be able to have it easy to do their jobs. In order to do that, though, we need these kinds of technologies to come to us in a way that we can absorb them. And today, we are excited about OpenStack. We're exploring those kinds of things. However, in order to explore effectively, we have to have you meet us where we are, which is we have a plethora. We have everything that you've mentioned, from every vendor that you've mentioned in our environment that we're managing. And our environment is very complex. We came together with Wachovia and Wells Fargo, 2 large mega banks that came together. We're doing great. Wells Fargo is one of the darlings of the industry, as you all know, right?
Right.
But to do that, we really do have a bullseye on us, and we are part of that economy that we're trying to sustain. And we have all the regulations, and we have our consumers, and we have all this wonderful technology that's breeding amongst us that we want to take advantage of. But in order to take advantage of it, we really do need to have you to help us, to help ourselves, to move from where we are.
To simplify things with the performance you need, with the results you need, but at the same time, in a cost-effective way. Because sometimes you talk about these technologies, the cost effectiveness is not there. Okay? It's not only the total cost, not only the CapEx and OpEx you're talking about, but also doing it in a way it's still high performance,
Absolutely.
gets you where you need to do,
Absolutely.
and what you need to do. So having said all this, I remember the time when we were talking to Wells Fargo in the last few years, when we said or asked, what are the top 3 things for you? And Wachovia, the integration, security. I don't know if you guys saw on the news this morning, there was renewed attacks to our leading banks, including
Yes.
Wells Fargo.
Yes.
I know the banks did pretty well, at least a little bit better than what happened to Target and a couple of the retailers. Obviously, banks are doing a lot of investment in this space, but hopefully security is going to be lesser concern. It's always going to be a concern, but with the right technology. So having said that, on this topic, we're talking about open source meeting, closed source, public versus private, all these cloud infrastructures. Chris, you're managing a public cloud service. You have liability. You're not only managing your own data, you're actually hosting other people's data. So I'm sure you have the right legalese, right SLAs in place, but that stuff is not only about performance, but also about reliability and most importantly, security. What are the things that you're looking for from the vendor community, which are your partners like us, for them to support you? What are the key themes that you can share with us?
Sure. So, I mean, we've been looking at OpenStack as an option for us for years, right? 2 years ago, we launched an initiative. We were actually talking to Boris, the guys at Marantis, to help us down those paths. And we looked at being able to define the criteria that help us protect data, that help us to ensure data segregation, be able to demonstrate those things very clearly to our customers. Because when they come to us, We have to be able to prove how secure the data is and how we're going to be able to deliver on the requirements they have. 2 years ago, I don't know that we were there from either our organization or from an overall IT industry organization being able to demonstrate those things. Today, I think we're a lot closer. One of our goals here in 2014-15 is to reduce our dependency on non-open technologies. And I'm really glad to see that the industry as a whole has progressed so much in that area, because now we're ready to head down that path.
Super. And speaking of Mirantis, I know Boris has been talking to you, but I know when he comes to San Diego for meetings, he's in a suit and a tie. Only he chooses to have those shoes and the polo at my event. But how is everything going, Boris, with you, with the deals like this, the deployments like that? You guys are having a lot of work with service providers. They are basically the canary in the mine, right? They're letting everybody know if things are working well or not. As part of your customer base is working with you, where do you see the trends for you and for the technologies that you guys are leading with?
Well, I think that what I'm going to say is going to I'm going to try to unify all the statements that everybody here has made. And at the same time, attempt to maybe pick a fight with my favorite foe, Randy, because that's what we do.
You guys are best friends at the same time. I don't know how is that happening.
So the one thing that Randy said, and we've been discussing this several times with him, is that there is zero value in the infrastructure layer. And I don't quite agree with that statement. There is kind of a school of thought that says that all of the infrastructure is getting completely commoditized. And in fact, right now, infrastructure is like electricity, where you can just plug in and get your infrastructure, and that's kind of the Amazon model. I don't agree with this, and the reason I don't agree with this is because unlike electricity, the IT infrastructure space is very fast moving, and there's an enormous amount of innovation happening every day. Unlike in case of electricity, where we've seen innovation around batteries, but from the standpoint of still electricity, there's very limited innovation happening in that space. And I think for organizations like Wells Fargo, it is extremely important to be able to take advantage of that innovation as fast and as efficiently and non-disruptively to the organization as possible. And this is really kind of where we at Mirantis see the core value of what we do and the core value of the OpenStack project. It is the vendor momentum behind OpenStack, and all the different vendors that are innovating in the infrastructure space, who have actually written drivers and have ensured interoperability between their solution and the OpenStack, which is now the universal kind of data center fabric, which is what brings the value out. And I can give you kind of very concrete example, not speaking in terms of abstraction. So Big Switch right here. So these are one of the newer innovators that are doing some interesting stuff around the networking, which is, I agree, is a big issue. And what they're trying to do is they're bringing basically the Google networking to the enterprise. They're trying to enable enterprises to do networking the Google way, the new way, the better way. So if the enterprise is running OpenStack as a data center fabric, Big Switch has a driver, and we work with Big Switch, and we're happy to bring Big Switch into that organization. Now, if enterprise is running something like VMware, I think that VMware will, look at Big Switch and say, F off, guys, we have an SX. And a lot of conflicts arise from there. So the openness of the data center fabric that OpenStack brings is really the vision behind what we do. And bringing these innovations like Big Switch into the enterprises in a non-disruptive way is what we aim to accomplish.
So I don't know how we're going to tweet that, F off the piece, but I'm just thinking about this. That was a good one. So stop tweeting match. No, please don't do that. I know you're doing a lot of tweet right now because it's going to show up right there. Totally agree with you. And I think that's one of the topics, right? VMware announced OpenStack solutions. Obviously, Citrix with Cloud.com and CloudStack and Zen, and they have some work on also integrating some of their work with customer's choice, if that's customer choice. Red Hat made acquisitions over the past a couple of years in the space. They're trying to become a storage vendor themselves, right? They're building their stack. Microsoft is doing a lot of work. So a lot of these type of stacks all over the place. I guess what you're hearing from Cherie and Chris and our customers is all that's great, but at the end of the day, help me with my specific vertical needs, industry needs, help me with my workload needs and app needs, delivering those workloads. So having said all this, obviously at Dell, Sam, you kind of talked about it, right? Bringing all these things together end to end from data center to the end user and everything in between. Dell made a lot of acquisitions like Wise, like SonicWall, and many others in the past few years. And you've been involved as an advisor to Marius and to Michael. What's the next 5 years, Sam? Based on what you're hearing with these folks, right? Minus the FF part. What do you think? What's the next 3 years going to look like for a company like Dell as an infrastructure play, with the workloads are being abstracted through software, let's say through SDDC?
The interesting thing that you're bringing up, and I won't use Boris's language, but first of all, I won't comment on acquisitions, but I'll tell you where we're really looking, and very seriously. Containers are a new buzzword. It's a good way to call virtualization in a box. Solomon's doing a great job selling that concept. We believe that the PaaS layer is very immature and has to be cleaned up and made a lot tighter. There's too many tools in Cloud Foundry and OpenShift. We believe that the SaaS layer has to get stronger. We also believe that the Internet of Things, and I hate that term, or the sea of sensors, whatever you want to call it, is going to be very critical. It's so critical that banks are now looking at different forms of authentication and validation and things like that. We're very concerned about delivering customer value. And no customer came up to me this week, sitting in VMware and said, boy, I'm buying this because hyperconverged is cool. What they said to me is, I've invested in VMware for years, and I'm not going to walk away from it. If you can make instantiation, standing it up in 12 and a half minutes, was what we did in our labs, we're interested. The 2U4N factor is compelling. And by the way, we also work with other companies on OpenStack. Matter of fact, one of our guys works with Boris and all that on something called Core, which is basically the foundation of OpenStack. We have done work with Cloud Foundry. We've also done a lot of work with Eucalyptus. It's really what brings the customer value quickest without becoming an OpenStack expert. It's cool for all of us to be able to know all the APIs and be able to install it, but it's not cool for a customer who at 2 o'clock in the morning is not getting the service or their ATMs aren't up.
So on that note, you mentioned a lot of vendors, and that's one of the things that we love about you and your knowledge about the industry and partners. Randy, I mean, you're hearing all these vendors. Let me ask you, not to try to stir up, but honestly, you've been in this business for a long time, both on the buying side and development side and partner side and vendor side, now with cloud scaling, one of the leaders in the OpenStack space. If OpenStack continues its growth and maturity, let's be very open on this topic, and not trying to stir it up, but it's a fact. If everything with OpenStack is happening in a way that the customers are leading the vendor community toward 2, like you heard also from Chris, what ScaleMatrix is trying to do. Do we need to pay all that money now to the compute, storage, and the networking layer that we've been paying over the past 2-3 decades? You're seeing some of those deals, and if you don't agree with me, I'm just asking as a question, why would you go really close, just beyond what Sam said, to leverage the current investment that the customers made?
You need to pay for the storage, compute, and networking
Yeah.
layers. Sorry.
Yeah. That's fair enough.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to where I was earlier and disagree with Boris on.
I love that.
There was a Forrester analyst, Craig Leclerc, who said that in the last 10 years, 70% of the Fortune 1000 has turned over because of their failure to adapt for change. And it is a truism now. I don't even. It's almost like I don't have to state it. I mean, if you aren't, working on social platforms, on mobile platforms, if you aren't integrating with iOS and Android, if you aren't dealing with big data and analytics and understanding how to manage, the mountain of data that's escalating and trying to derive as much value out of it as possible, if you aren't doing any of those things, then it's likely that your business has no future. And so I think again, people miss the forest for the trees. Like, with all due respect to everybody on the panel, if I've got Big Switch here and I'm customer A and I've got NSX here and I'm customer B, that doesn't mean anything to any of the application developers that are consuming those clouds. They couldn't care less. All they care is it's a service. Amazon Web Services' huge value to developers is, hey, here's an API, you can call it, and here's these guarantees it'll give you when you call that API. And nobody has any friggin' idea what is being called in the back end. They have no idea what that technology is. And sometimes I think people look at OpenStack or CloudStack and they're all wrapped around the axle about, like, do we use this fiber channel or that? And it's like, none of that really matters. There is no value in the infrastructure. And I say this, 24 years of building these things and running them in production. I love infrastructure. I love the new shiny toy. Man, if I could just sit around and run like a data center full of servers and storage and networking and fiddle around with it all day long, I would love to do that. But it doesn't provide any value to the business. It provides zero value. And as things escalate, as we move faster, businesses like Amazon and Google and Facebook and Twitter that in aggregate deliver more features and do more new stuff per year as they get bigger are going to be the de facto norm. And businesses that actually go slower and deliver less and less and less as they get bigger are going to be the dinosaurs. And OpenStack is just a means to an end to enable that, and so are all the other technologies here. And you're going to pick whatever works best for you. And if you're smart, you'll focus on the business value and not on the underlying infrastructure.
You sound friggin' like Sherry. He friggin' sounds like you. I think you're going to hire him to Wells Fargo. Do you want to be a banker? No, I don't think. I don't think you can. For a good reason. So we have about 3 minutes left. Any questions? I'll tell you. This is a fun group. Gary, they look fun, right? Yeah. Any questions in the room? Any questions? Any problem? Can you introduce yourself, Doug?
Hi, Doug Sultan with my Mainlines. So I agree that cloud's the future, but my concerns are every week, like last week, we saw problems with Azure. We've seen problems with other cloud stacks. We've seen Rackspace exit the IaaS market. We're seeing Google say next year they're going to aggressively cut the cost of cloud. So I agree, I want to do what's best for my business, but how, with security, will this provider go out of business? And will I get these disruptions during non-maintenance time? How do I, as a small business, live with that?
Praveen, do you want to take that? By the way, Doug is context for you. CIO of Mainlines in New Jersey.
Yeah,
That's a Dell customer.
Absolutely. And he's going to be in the next panel, by the way. He has a lot of points of view, friggin' point of view. You're going to have him.
I've been sort of listening to this with a lot of interest and wanting to jump in on this, right? I will, I think, disagree with Randy and say infrastructure does matter. What he says is true, which is if you're a developer, right? If you are a CEO or a CFO, you care about the business value. But, if your cloud goes down, right? If you have a breakage, right? If you don't get the performance that you need from your VDI session, that's kind of matters, right? I mean, it is sort of relevant and it's important. There's a lot of stuff that goes on underneath. I mean, clearly, hacking on CLI and being a CCIE is not as sexy as it used to be 10 years ago, right? We've kind of gotten past that. Maybe the VMUG and that's going to have its time, and the DevOps guys will have their time as well. But I think, look, every layer in the architecture matters, right? I mean, somebody has to provide the cloud. Somebody has to make sure the guarantees are there, right? And if you are a cloud provider like SoftBank, they worry. I mean, they got people basically 24/7 watching that infrastructure to make sure that the DevOps guys don't have to worry about the infrastructure. So, I think it is extremely important the choices that you make in the infrastructure are optimized to the problem you're trying to solve. The one thing, I had the fortune of joining Cisco when the internet was still a public entity run by the US government, right? And as it evolved, one thing we learned is there's not going to be one defined way that you build infrastructure. You have to make very explicit choices on the technologies that you choose, and that has to be mapped to the problem you're trying to solve, right? So, you know, if you're looking at all these cloud choices, I mean, there's everything from AWS to Google to, you know, SoftBank to AT&T, Verizon, right? Rackspace, there's a whole bunch of options, and I think it's really important to understand each provider has a strength. What is it that you're trying to accomplish and deliver for your end users, right? You know, is it a, you know, is your data security a big deal for you? Where it's stored, is that a big deal for you? You know, are you born in the cloud, right? Do you have a bunch of legacy applications? I think those are the questions that matter. And, you know, the thread goes all the way down. I think we, you know, we sort of grossly simplifying by saying infrastructure doesn't matter. I think it is something that is dangerous in my mind, right? Because you've got to tie that whole chain together, right? You know, value is derived all the way from the application down to how it gets delivered. And I think, you know, that'll still matter. The customer experience matters, right? And customer experience is defined all the way up the stack.
But that's not true. That's not true, because what we've seen with the Amazon Web Services is that fundamentally with the titanic shifts in cloud computing is that the application is taking responsibility for its availability, its data replication, and so on. You've got people like Netflix doing 4, 5, 9 services running on top of 2.5, 9 infrastructure. So that's part of the transformation, is that the application and the application development teams are becoming responsible for the service delivery. Google runs a 4, 5, 9 cloud service. It's the developers who are responsible. Amazon.com and Amazon Web Services, they run it. It's the developers who are responsible.
And I don't disagree with you, right? But you have to realize, if you talk to Sherry or you talk to an oil and gas customer, you know, they're not born in the cloud. I mean, they have 500 applications that are extremely critical for their
and they should put a
deployments,
VCE
right?
block under that. There's no
Right.
doubt.
So
But there's
you're making my
another.
point.
There's a new way of doing it, which is the cloud way. VCE block is not a cloud; it's a virtualization platform.
So
I
you're
think,
making
by
my
the way,
point,
guys,
which is you got to make the choices. The infrastructure has got to map. You got to map the infrastructure to the use case.
I love you guys. This was rehearsed, by the way. Everything is rehearsed. I love this. I love you guys. I freaking love you both. By the way, we're over time. I mean, I can see Jill goes, no, God, Secret Service. Don't fight. I'm going to take one last question. Ask something really fun. Carlos? Carlos, introduce yourself.
Carlos Escapa from Unitrends. Interesting discussion. I think the Godfather would say that infrastructure doesn't matter, the apps don't matter, the family matters.
And they are a family.
I would like to ask the panel for some guidance. This new hybridity, not heterogeneity, right?
Yeah.
Hybridity. And maybe Cheryl, you would be a good person to ask. How do you decide what you run in-house and what you take to the cloud?
This is for Shang, right? This is for Shang.
Shannon.
Yeah. Oh, Sherry. Sherry, sorry.
Sorry, my accent's
No. Your accent's perfect. Better than mine.
I will tell you that that is a tough question for us. I mean, we are actually wrestling with what makes sense. Clearly, we want to keep your customer information in-house and close at home and protected. But there are things that we look at because we do have SaaS solutions that we are engaging in. But it's all about making sure that that data is encrypted if indeed it goes out. But at the moment, we're not even looking at bringing any data outside of our four walls that we can't be assured we know where it is, what's being done to it, et cetera. So that's kind of the model, if you will, that we have to date. I would expect that over time, as vendors are able to show us that things are secure, that we will branch out from there. But today, given what we know and our need to make sure that we don't expose ourselves any more than necessary from a financial perspective, because that's all of our livelihood, we want to make sure that we keep that safe.
Super. By the way, I have a question for you, Andy. SoftBank, you left, and I'm sure you got tons of options. SoftBank owns Alibaba. What, $700 billion IPO or whatever? Can I be your friend? Please make me your friend. So, joking aside, obviously you guys are bought Sprint, right? There are some other acquisition work already public being talked about. Some of them moving forward, some of them I'm sure it's gonna happen in some shape or form around the world. You guys as SoftBank have multiple investments in Japan. And also in gaming world, obviously you guys are big. And obviously now Alibaba and Yahoo Japan, some of the investments there, the IPO movements there. What are you seeing outside of US? Now you're based here, you're in the Booney Land. Where do you live now?
I live in Los Gatos. It's the boonies.
You're not Los Gatos, you're in the hills
boonies.
somewhere. You're like Tarzan. But you're in Japan a lot, you're in China a lot, you go to those board meetings. What are you seeing from Alibaba and others, and what we're missing here in the Silicon Valley that we're not seeing?
Well, I think when Wells Fargo can drive a semi-truck full of servers into a cloud service provider like Amazon and actually move a lot of workloads there, our service provider business will have developed to the point where it's easy to adopt. But that's not realistic. And we're really excited about VMware and the hybrid cloud solution. We have a joint venture with VMware in Japan to deliver hybrid cloud services for enterprises that have this problem. How do they move to the cloud? And it is both elastic applications that Randy's been working with and steady state, ERP, things that you don't see Groupon developers working to build. These are client server applications that are still the brick and mortar of these companies, and not everything has moved to SaaS and platform as a service just yet. So we're excited about the ability to partner with a company like VMware that has a tremendous market share with the enterprises and give them an on-ramp so they can start using a cloud service provider for these types of workloads. It's not possible yet. And that's really what I'm excited about in the enterprise space. And also in the public cloud, there's a big war going on right now. We see with Amazon, revenue decelerating, due to price cuts. And so you can tell.
Race to the bottom, right? I mean,
yes,
it's growing crazy right now.
Rack space. And I think the enterprise concern, the other concern that I'm working towards is to address longevity of information and security, to your point about how do you get the data out of the cloud that you put into it. I think it was Larry Ellison who said, maybe 15 years ago that, you couldn't get the data out of Oracle that you put into it until at least Oracle 7 or something like that. So, it's early days. And, how do we drive, into the professional era? And, VMware has been a big part of that. So we're very excited about our relationship with them. But we're also looking at, companies like what Randy and Boris are doing, and also Big Switch and the Nicira team at VMware to really define, software-defined mechanisms to develop standards, because these standards can't emerge until we have, something that covers the beach where the land meets the sea, the hardware and software, and get out of the mainframe era to kind of make this easier.
And I love your CEO. Ken Miyachi. Miyachi-san is here, or he flew back already?
He's back.
He's back. So Miyachi-san works with, obviously with Masa, and I remember having a dinner, actually, myself and Praveen were sitting down, and Ken is very open. He goes, you know what? I know I'm a VC customer, but I'm going to go open source, open all the way. You remember that conversation? And I remember Praveen having this nice conversation, trying to explain it to him, exactly what you're trying to explain, what's going on here. It got a little bit fun earlier. I like it with Randy. I'm sure you guys are gonna have some sugar outside and make up. You should have sugar before panels. You should have sugar before any kind of fight with your wife or husband, and you should have sugar before you have these panels.
But get on your panels.
I remember when I
predict when I'm gonna have a fight with my wife, I'm gonna get in trouble.
Not about OpenStack, I'm sure. But going back, the reason I'm bringing this anecdote, I remember as he's looking at the SoftBank cost, the infrastructure cost. Even though he wants to do a lot of these new things, obviously with Niciras of the world, Big Switches of the world, Mirantis, cloud scaling type of companies, Nexenta, going back to what we heard obviously from Praveen, that infrastructure availability, reliability, scale, tying to the total cost of ownership that Sherry cares about, not only on CapEx but also on OpEx, is a big deal. I know we're stating the obvious, but we cannot stop stating that obvious because it comes back over and over again from our customers. So on that note, thank you so much for being part of the panel. If you thought this panel was kind of going crazy, wait for the next one after this 15-minute break.